Hey guys, welcome to episode number 72 of the Game On Girlfriend podcast. We have someone really cool for you today. I think you're going to love this interview. Her name is Trish Taylor. She's a stylist and brand embodiment coach. Hi. Yeah, I know, right? All of the cool things in one sentence. That's how that feels. She is filling what I think is a massive void in the marketplace around how to show up online as yourself, not like everybody else. And that sounds like, well, duh, of course, everybody always tells you to be yourself. It is not that easy, you guys. So if you found yourself wondering, like, how do I figure this out? How do I show up online and be, like me? Hi, me. How do I do that? She actually walks us through what she truly did for herself, because what her journey entails is her grappling with the effects of not loving her own body, grappling with this idea that she had to look or be a certain way. And she's so honest and transparent about this. It is so cool. And I'm so grateful to her for being so honest with us during this interview. And I think you're really going to enjoy it. And there were a couple of times where she'd say something and I'd be like, whoa, back up. On the daily, what did you do to cause this to happen for yourself? And she was so open and honest. It was really cool. And I think it's going to really, really help. In addition, you're going to find below right here, she has offered us a really cool freebie that I would love for you to go check out. It's a brand liberation masterclass, which I think is so cool. I got to tell you, she comes up with the best titles for stuff. But brand liberation, like how do you actually create a brand that is liberated from all the shoulds, from all the supposed tos? And one of the things she said in the interview that I just loved is like, if you don't want to go buy a pink blazer, don't go buy a pink blazer. Everybody has a pink blazer. And I just like wanted to fall out of my seat with happiness because that's exactly how I feel. Like, go be yourself. I want you to listen for that inside the interview. And then the next thing I want you to know is right after we stopped recording, she mentioned that she's got this really cool tapping exercise for those of you who are a little bit nervous to get out there. Like you're actually like, maybe you're about to do a photo shoot or you're about to do your first video or you're about to put anything out online that makes you feel a little bit nervous. It's not like your normal, duck lip selfie. You're actually going to do something that represents you or your brand or your life and you're nervous. She has generously gifted us this awesome tapping exercise, which you'll also find below. All right. So without further ado, I would tell you, pop in those freaking earphones, put up your feet, grab a great cup of tea, and let's get to it in episode number 72. Welcome to the Game On Girlfriend podcast. I'm so excited to have you on today. I have a feeling we're about to have a really cool conversation.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I know your energy is just, it's palpable. I'm so excited to get into this conversation and just share the goodness of who we are, how we got here.
I'm all about it. Let's go. Oh my gosh, so fun. So I have a really interesting question that when you reached out, you said like, Sarah, I want to be on the podcast. I was like, oh my gosh, get over here. I can't wait. This was so exciting, right? You said something that I like, it almost woke me up at like 3:00 in the morning one night. I'm like, that is like the best thing I've ever heard. You said that you want to have our listeners learn. You guys listen to this. Just hold on to your hats and glasses. Have us learn how we can detach our worthiness from someone else's accomplishment. I have a feeling we could go for about 3 hours on just this one thing, but I'm like blown away by this. Can you tell us how to detach our worthiness from someone else's accomplishments? That would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yes, of course. And this has been such a learning process for me as well. I feel like as entrepreneurs, as people, as women, we are always on this like upward spiral of ascension into our own highest self, like figuring out who we are, our worth, and learning to trust ourselves. And so this is really an evolvement, right? And what I found is that we have to deconstruct all of the things that have brought us to where we are. Oftentimes, right, we need to deconstruct to reconstruct. And so sometimes when we feel like we are not doing enough, we're trapped inside of someone else's box. We're trying to measure ourselves against their own accomplishments. And that's not fair to us, right? That's not fair to the story, the history, the journey, the little trauma, the big trauma, who we are, all of the things that have brought us to us. And so as entrepreneurs, as women in business, I think it's so important that we start to trust where we've been and that we are actually where we really need to be right now. So when we can start to step into the worthiness of we are valuable, we are worthy, we are enough right now in this moment without having to do all of the other things that everybody is saying is the right way or the things that you should be doing. You get to liberate yourself, liberate your personal brand so that you can start to trust the way that you want to do business, the way that you want to live life on your own terms.
Okay. Yes. Yes, please. And so let's put ourselves in a moment, shall we? Let's say you're like, oh my gosh, having the best day. You're doing all the things. You're totally killing it in your own business. You're super happy. And boom, you do that thing I always tell people not to do. You go onto the Instas and all of a sudden everybody's life looks perfect. And the way they're offering their stuff looks so perfect. And you're just like, oh my gosh, I suck. Because that's that moment, right, where you attach your worthiness to what somebody else has produced, what somebody else has put out, which, by the way, they probably feel inadequate in putting out because they saw someone else do it better, right? That whole cycle. What do you do in that moment? Like you're in the moment of like, oh my gosh, I'm a doofus. I totally should not be doing this. Who the hell do I think I am? All those things that, by the way, aren't even original that everybody says to themselves. What do you do in that moment? Because you have just attached your worthiness to somebody else's accomplishment.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's that comparisonitis, right? Or
Totally.
imposter syndrome. Like all of these buzzwords that we're getting fed all the time, right? These are the actual pain points that we're feeling, but what is the why underneath it? So
Mhm.
like, why are you judging yourself compared to that person? What is that thing beneath the comparison that's getting you to feel some kind of way, right? Like what has you spun right now? And so for me, I know like, gosh, I'm sure that we all have so many different underlying things that are
There's no
just
question.
making right that are just making it feel a little bit heavier or a little bit harder to feel ready or to feel worthy.
Mm.
But what I have to say from like a personal standpoint, like early on in my business when I was showing up or trying to, right, show up authentically, it's that word authenticity is like so ambiguous sometimes when
It
you
is.
are, especially when you're struggling with this comparisonitis, because we're feeling like, God, I'm so boring, right? Like I am so boring. How am I going to do anything new or different or original? Why is, why is my business? Why am I different than any other coach online? And so when we can figure out like, what is the thing underneath the thing that is having you compare yourself? For
Mm.
me, it was the way that I looked in my photos. It was my
Ah.
body. I didn't feel
Mm.
comfortable, right, in my own skin. And so then when I really thought about it, I was like, oh my God, someone's going to judge me for this.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that went back all the way to childhood, young adult, like teenage. And what I realized is that I was afraid of being seen, so I didn't express myself. And then that was like a trickle
Interesting.
down effect to all the other things, right? Like I didn't feel seen, I didn't feel worthy of that attention. So all this visibility that I was craving, I didn't actually want, right? Like I wanted it so bad. I took all the courses, I did all the things, I posted consistently, I said all the quote unquote right things,
Mm-hmm.
but actually I wasn't being myself because I didn't even know how to be her yet. I didn't even
Mm.
feel worthy of being this person that I had no idea was living beneath the surface.
So is that because, like, let's dive into that for a second, because you're definitely not the only person to go through that in any way, right? For me, it's always my hair. My hair, I'm about to just shave it off, right? Like, oh my gosh, we all have a thing. What is that? So you're not unique in that way, right? Because we've all got the thing we hang up on, right? This is where our shared humanity comes in. And I love that part. That's why I'm so grateful when someone comes on and they're as like generous as you are with the like, hey, I actually felt this way, because we all feel that way. And so when we can talk about it, we actually have something we can do with it. So as you're starting to feel like you had to have your pictures look a certain way, or you had to be a certain way online, or you had to present a certain way, which, we're really talking about more all throughout this year about whether that's race or gender. What is this presentation you're putting on, right? And there's so many different boxes for it. As you realized you were afraid of what I call the success tax, which is critique of anything, right? It doesn't matter. You could be like, people critique Oprah, which is still something that blows my mind, but they do, right? It's like, okay, so we know we're going to get critiqued. we know that's going to happen. And anybody who's sitting in the stands watching the people on the field, that's what they do. They critique. They have nothing at stake. They're not doing anything, but they feel free to critique, right? So we know that part of the game. Mm. But underneath this, you said something really interesting was, I was presenting this certain way, but I realized there was somebody else underneath that. What did that feel like? Were you like, oh, I got to fight for the one underneath? Did it scare you even more? Like, uh-oh, now we got something new to critique. Or did it feel like you shouldn't do that? You have to do it the way everybody else does. How did that feel for you? Like, what did you go through to get through that?
Yeah, I felt like I was always missing something, but I didn't really know what it was. And I think it was, I didn't even give myself the permission to feel it, like it was just, it really manifested in shyness or hiding behind my introvertedness, right? Like, oh, I'm actually really shy. I'm not comfortable, showing up. So I joined these amazing masterminds. Like I would, and I've had an incredible career, but I would downplay all of my success because I didn't feel like I had really made it, like quote unquote, right? And so, yeah, and it's because I wasn't truly aligned with what I was doing. So for those of you who don't know, I had like a career as a celebrity stylist, and then I transitioned into this online business world space, and I was like, what do I actually do here? Like who am I, and how am I supposed to show up? Because my whole career, my whole life was based on supporting other people. And I know many of us coaches and service providers can relate to that. We're more comfortable behind the scenes because we are lifter uppers. Like we help people shine. And then that gives us sometimes the excuse to be like, oh, it's all about you, like you do you, like I'm celebrating you. And then we drift off into the distance. And so what I found was I was totally squishing myself down, and I didn't know how to set that part free until I dug into like daily after affirmations and journaling and really figuring out, like following the rabbit hole really of like, okay, so I feel like someone's judging me because I said this. Why? Right? Like I feel judged because I look like this in my photos. Why? What would happen if I felt confident sharing my voice? What would happen if someone saw me as an expert? I'd have to think I was actually an expert too.
Yes.
Right?
Huge. Yes. Yes. Yeah, that is so interesting. I was just talking to someone about that the other day where I was like, you're an expert in this. She's like, we do that, right? Even though, like you said, you have these years and years and years of experience with celebrities and styling them and helping them present, right? And talk about the ability to critique, right? Like, oh my gosh, there you were. It's like that whole world, understanding all of that. And it is really interesting, I found, and I think you're hitting on something that's really cool, which is that it's when we shift to the online world. It's a really interesting thing, which is something everybody had to do last year, right? Like everybody had to have an online game. And it's like, and I feel like it was this interesting phenomenon. Like everybody started to look the same. Did you notice this? Am I crazy? Like everybody's stuff started to look exact. I was like, wait, didn't I see that? Oh, wait, that's someone. Wait, you all look the same. I can't tell. It was so interesting, right? But it goes right to what you're saying is we have to know internally that we are who we say we are. Not
I'm so glad
the world wants us to be, right?
You are so right. And that was so profound. And I see that, like, I think we're seeing it even more because we were probably just on social media even more last year, right? And with the invention of TikTok and Reels and all of the things, like it's so fun. We want to be a part of these cool trends that are happening. And then that drips into and bleeds into our graphic content or our photos. Like, how are you posing? What are you wearing? Like, do you have the power outfit? Like, do you look polished? And so that's where the comparison stems from. That's why we create the same things. But if we can figure out how we really want to be seen, what do you want to be known for? That's where that worthiness detaches, because no longer are you like, oh, well, she posted that one thing about how to get to, a consistent 6-figure, whatever. So I need to do the same thing because obviously like she got there. So I need to post the same thing. But instead we flip the switch and we figure out, how would I say it in my own voice? What tools would I actually use to get there? And I'm really only speaking to myself and one other person. So then if you can then detach that worthiness again, right? Like we're cutting the cord on all of the things that are causing us stress. And like, as I said, that I have chills because
Yeah, me too. I was going to say, oh my God, I just got chills. Yeah.
totally, because all of these little things, they're connected to little internal parts of us, right? And we're like little marionettes being pulled in all these different directions. And so if we can figure out like, I'm saying this because it helped me right now. I'm saying this because it
Mm,
helped the former version of me,
mm,
who really is my ideal client. Then we know we don't have to say anything any other way. We can say it exactly the way that we want to say it because it's gonna identify with the person we're trying to connect to.
love it. I love it. It's so true as well. And I think, I always tell my clients, I bet this really resonates with you, Trish. I'm always like, would you go break your industry, please? Like, I know what everybody else is doing. Go break it. Like, what about it do you not love, and fix it? Like, get out there and don't look at anybody else. And Marie Forleo says this a lot too: create before you consume. And I absolutely just love that phrase, but it goes to line with what you're saying is, okay, so know what the competitions do. So be aware of what's out there in the world. Sure. That's very different from being like inundated with it, right? And being like having it like slimed all over your face all day. There's that version of it. So being aware, but then I love what you said, Trish. It was, how would you say it in your own words, but also what if it's just you saying it to you and maybe one other person? I love that a lot, because I think what it does is it brings it back to the truth of who you really are, right? You're not trying to be anybody else when you're having coffee with a girlfriend. You're having coffee with your girlfriend. There's nowhere to get to. There's no one to, you're not trying to get her to buy something from you. You're not trying to get stuff. And instead you're just being and expressing, and God, what a different experience that is.
Right. This just makes it so much lighter and so much easier, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And I just have to say something really quick because you're so right. What you just said resonates with me so much, right? Go break your industry. And I had the hardest time figuring out how the heck to do that, right? It's just like be authentic, right? I had no idea how to do that. I was like, okay,
Like the most
okay.
vague direction ever. Be authentic to what? What? Yeah.
But it's profound. It's just like you don't know how you're going to do it until you know how you're going to do it. And so
Mm,
that's about leaning into the trust, right? And knowing that you've already got everything that you need inside of you right now to like another version, right? Is to zig when someone is zagging, right? Like
mhm,
we
mhm.
hear these things all the time and it's beautiful advice and we're like, but how the heck do I actually do that?
Yeah.
And so I struggled too, like in the beginning, like you said, when I transitioned to this online space, I was like, oh, so like the deal is I create a 997 course and like it's my like signature method. And so I've got to do like a challenge, right? And so like I mapped it all out and I did it. And I was like, wow, this just feels like so boring. And
Well,
if
and
you're
awful.
and you know what? And like I delivered beautiful content and the women who joined, I was so grateful for. But I was like, gosh, I could make this more fun. I could make this more like
Mm,
me. I really felt like I was trying to like deliver it exactly the way that I should be delivering it. And so I changed things up and I created a signature method. And that's how you really start to do that, right? This is what you're talking about, breaking your industry.
mhm,
You create something that is unique to you. So
mhm.
yeah, I created a whole system around how to style yourself for your brand photo shoot, which is totally in line with me as a celebrity stylist, working with brands, working with celebrities on their photo shoots, working with online entrepreneurs who need the same thing. And
Mm,
I had a
mm.
background in counseling. So I worked with the inside and the outside and I connected all the things. So it's like, what are your little sprinkles in your life that allow you to draw from that so you can go break your industry. So you can go
Love
zig
it.
when someone zags.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. And you did exactly what I always tell people to do. And I love that you called it sprinkles. I think that might be my favorite version ever. But I always say, what is your experience, right? Like you said, you have the background in counseling. What are your talents,
Mhm.
right? And what's your expertise? And what is the sweet spot where those three things meet? How can you combine that in a way that does create something totally unique that nobody else has? And to not be cliche about that, like to be unapologetic about that. You don't have to have the cute catchphrase exactly like everyone else or present it exactly. Have your 997 course. When you said that, I almost fell in my chair because yes, oh my gosh, like stop it. Just ah, right? Like there's just the same thing over and over. And listen, there's a platform, like don't reinvent the wheel for sure. But I love what you did, Trish, where you're like, okay, so I did that. And then it was like, no. Let me fix this. Let me tweak that. Let me fix this. Let me tweak that. And that second piece, I think, is where a lot of people tend to get lost. And I think it's so great that you just shared that, because for anybody listening, right, it was like, what? How do I just launched and nobody cares. It's like, well, you might have not launched you. You might have launched whoever taught you to do that, or whatever the case may be. So it's really great that you shared that. And there's something else that you do that I think is really cool. You talk about how people need to have the mind body brand connection in place before they go out. Meaning before they go out as a brand, right? Like, and not just go out on the town, but I mean, like before you go out and like, hi world, here I am. Like, how does somebody connect their mind, body, and brand like that?
It's such a fun way to say it. And it totally came to me one day and I was like, oh yeah, this totally makes sense. This is how it happens. So you really have to get behind what you want to do, how you want to be seen, how you want to show up, and you've got to really support yourself. So you have to curate the support that you need, and it's going to be individual for everybody. But right, like mindfulness practices are really important. So for me, I talked about like I journaled, I did affirmations, I did mirror work. I surrounded myself with like masterminds and like people who would help hold the vision for me in a way that felt like me. So I got rid of all the things that were no longer supporting me, right? Like I was no longer allowing the input into my mind, into my like sphere of strategies that didn't really work, like things that I didn't really want to build, right? And I started to go and learn from people that I loved what they did. And then I started to embody who I was and how I wanted to show up. And so when you start to trust yourself, when you start to feel good in your physical body, you start to stress less about what's actually on your body, like what your hair is doing that day, right? Like, like if you've got the COVID-20 or whatever, or like if you don't wear jeans anymore, and like it becomes more about how you want to be seen. And so I started creating this and talking about intuitive style, where it's less about the trends and what your quote unquote most polished like person in the industry is doing, right? Like you don't need a pink blazer if you don't want a pink blazer, right? Like wear a shirt with an avocado on it if it speaks to your people, right?
Please, please. Oh my gosh, I love what you're saying.
Yeah.
And you call that intuitive style?
I do. Yeah.
I love that. I think that's very cool. Yeah. There was a lot in what you just said that I thought was really cool, because you kind of like opened the kimono a little bit. Because my next question was going to be like, how do you embody your own body, right? Which sounds silly, but I've heard a lot of women saying this lately, like drop into your own body or get grounded. And I'm like, that to me is kind of like be authentic. I think I sort of know what that means, but I don't know what that means. Like I know what it means, but how do I do that? Right. That kind of a feeling. So you said a whole bunch of stuff, which was you did mirror work. You did a lot of journaling. You looked at how you really wanted to show yourself to the world or have the world see you. How did you do that on the daily? Like, what did that actually look like? Like if I were a fly on the wall watching Trish take over the world, right? Like I'm going to do this now. Like what did you do on a day-to-day basis? Did you ever have the don't wannas? I'm feeling this is stupid. I should just do it like everybody else. Did you have those moments? Like, can you walk us through that?
Of course, everybody does, right? Like that's like the human experience, of course. But what I did is I only started with the things that felt good. It's like, people talk about your workout routine, like do the thing that feels good to you and then you'll keep showing up, right? So that's like a thing that I have taken on for my whole life, right? Like I'm only going to start with the thing that I want to do, because it took me so long to figure out like what I actually wanted. Because I'm such a people pleaser. So even in my own like work, I was like, I'm talking about like the open the kimono work, right? Like the people pleaser work. I was trying to do the things that was like everybody else is doing on their morning routines, right? And so what I have to say is, for me, I had the time in my day in the morning. So what I did is I started getting up earlier, like really early, like 4 a.m. early.
That's my favorite time.
Okay. Normally people are like,
yes,
crazy.
I love 4 o'clock.
Yeah. So I
Don't
started
attack.
getting up early, right? And I'm like, I don't know, I like took on this old lady persona, and apparently I like to go to bed early too, so it's all good. So I started with a warm like cup of tea. I would like light a candle, and then I would just set up the space as kind of like a beautiful morning ritual. Like it was only for me, and it was like dark and kind of warm, and it just felt cozy and good. And so I would start with journaling. So every day I would write. I didn't know how to journal at first.
Yeah, I
You
get
know.
that a lot. People are like, how do you journal? I'm like, you put your pen on the paper and it moves. So, but no, tell me, what did you do?
Yeah. So I kind of start with what I needed. So I
Yeah.
started with affirmations, right? Like, God, I am worthy. Like, I am worthy. I am worthy. I am worthy. Like, just over and over again until I actually started rewiring my mind a little bit. Like,
Mhm.
holy, like crap. Like, I actually am. Right. But like,
Yeah.
what do I want? And then it led me into like, oh, so I actually can get these things. Like, what is the thing that I want? Like, what do I desire to have in my business, in my life? And then
Mhm.
I started journaling on that. Like, I'm worthy of this because I am actually worthy, right? Like,
Mm.
or, and then like mirror work, I ignored my body for so long. Like, even,
Oh,
in high
interesting.
school, I was
Mm.
like a style chameleon. Like, I loved style, right? That led me to my career in styling. But I didn't have a signature style. I never like looked like myself. I would have the coolest clothes. And like I think I was voted like the most stylish, like all the like things. But I never really felt comfortable in my skin.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so now, like as like many pounds heavier, many sizes larger, like many years later, I feel the most confident I've ever felt because I've done this work and I feel so good as I am right now. And I know that my worthiness is not determined by the size of my clothes, by the weight of my body, by like the curves, like I'm so detached from that I can see myself for who I truly am. And
Mm.
so I did this fun thing with, on my Instagram like years ago. In the very beginning, we did a challenge where we would write a post-it and put it on the mirror. And you would just give yourself a compliment. And it started just easy like that. Like, my smile is beautiful. Like, my body is strong, like whatever it is. And then every day you would see it for 21 days. And, there's the study that after 21 days, you can rewire a habit. I believe that it can happen much, much faster now. But if you're building this muscle, it does take repetition.
Mhm.
And so there's lots of ways that you can kind of open yourself up to this. And there was something I wanted to share earlier. So I'm just going to quickly go back to it. When we were talking about like trying to figure out like how to break your industry, it's
Mhm.
because you don't feel like you have the accomplishments. You don't feel like you're worthy of the attention that is deserved to break the industry, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yes.
so
Yes.
what I did, I felt the same way. I got
Right.
outside of myself and I wrote a letter from like my best friend or from a client. I can't remember like what the context was, but I wrote it from someone else talking about all the things that I've done,
Oh, I
right?
love it. I love it.
Sometimes we're too harsh, right? Like our inner critic is
Yes.
so strong until you put mute on that inner mean girl. Like she is loud and she is like talking to you every day. And so that's how, right, we can get into our body. We can drop into the trueness of who we are. We can start to lean into trusting our intuition, trusting ourself, the way that we want to do things, and actually feel worthy of getting all the things that we want because we already know that we can have them.
Yeah, there's a piece that comes with that. I think that's part of that meditative word, right? To drop in like that, that's the piece that comes with this idea that while that mean voice will always be there, I always joke around with everybody. I'm like, it's like dinner for me as a mom, right? Dinner. Every day there's dinner. I'm like, I made dinner yesterday. I don't want to make dinner again today. Every day, somebody freaking eats dinner. I'm like, I don't want to do it. Right? It's like this constant thing. It's never going to go away. Ever. Right. And I think the recognition of that it's its job to attack That's it's a job. It's a job to say, shut up, sit down. It's safer, be quiet, right? That nonstop, incessant chatter, and just to sort of say, I see you. I'm going to be doing this now, and breathing through that. But I think the mirror work is so important. I do a lot of that mirror work training when I'm teaching somebody how to speak in public, and I'm like, if you're going to go give your signature talk, you have to make yourself cry in the mirror. And they're like, what? I was like, you got to connect. Like, if you're not going to connect, yeah, like, how do you expect anybody to connect with what you're saying? And they get so mad at me, and then they're like, oh my God, that was the best talk ever. It's like, because we don't want to connect, right? It's like this fear of connecting even to ourselves, of like, oh, right. Oh, I don't like my hair today. Oh, I don't like my smile's funny today. Oh, I don't, whatever it is. And that's what we're focusing on, as opposed to the content of the character and the content of the energy and the context in which we're speaking. And if we can't connect to that, Trish, the way that you just said that, if we can't connect to that, I don't know what the hell we're doing, right? Because nothing else is going to matter. You're just going to sound like this repetitive puppet out there, copying what everybody else is doing. And it feels awful. That's why I said earlier, where you're like, the 997 in my car. It's like, it doesn't feel great, because it's like, well, did I even come up with this? And it's like, God, I'm really smart, aren't I? You sort of get caught up in that thing. But this idea of journaling, I am worthy. It just sort of, when you actually get that and you actually hear that message, I am worthy, there's nothing else. Right. And we're crazy humans. So 30 seconds later, there will be something else. But the more that you can hold that moment,
that's okay.
right?
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Like you said, the repetition of it, and the more that you can experience that moment, the more normal it becomes to experience it. And I'm so grateful for you for sharing that, because a lot of times people will sort of like fly right over how they actually accomplished something amazing. They're like, and then it was Tuesday. So, and I'm like, what happened? But wait, what happened to Monday or whatever? So thank you. I appreciate you doing that. That was really great. And then I understand, Madam Trish, that you have something that you wanted to share with our audience. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I would love to hear about this.
Oh, of course. I'd be so grateful. But it really honestly is just like even more of what we were talking about. And so thank you for holding the space for this conversation. And just, oh my gosh, like I can feel everybody listening right now, just like the incredible up-leveling that you're even doing, just listening, right? Because the first step, just opening yourself up to like, oh my gosh, is there more? And it's okay, because even if you are following all the rules and you've achieved all the things, right? Like you've ticked all the boxes and you're like, so this is it. I've reached the mountaintop and I'm not satisfied, right? Like there's nothing wrong with you. You just desire deeper connection. And if it's not to someone else, maybe it's just to yourself. Like maybe you just want to feel good. And so that's what I'm talking about here. So we're talking about like personal brand liberation, right? We're getting deeper into who we are so we can truly connect with our soulmate clients and to ourselves. So I have a masterclass. It's all about how to honestly like liberate yourself from this comparisonitis. And so it's really specific, and it talks about how to create an on-brand photos that attract your soulmate clients without feeling like, every other coach out there right now. So if you guys are interested, I would be so excited to hear what you have to say, to share your feedback. Yeah, I think it's just going to be a beautiful way to even open up your awareness, because that's where it starts, right? Like, oh yeah, there's something, let's plant the seed and let's watch it grow. So I would love for you to join me. And inside I teach you all about my batch wardrobe method, where we're talking about blending the mind, body, and your brand together so that you can truly embody the message, your purpose for why you're actually doing what you're doing, and feel good about sharing it. Because that little inner critic, you put her on mute because you figured out who you are, how you want to be seen, and you feel worthy of the attention.
I love it. Oh my gosh, you guys, that sounds so good. I think I have to go grab it. So you guys, that will be in the show notes for this episode. Go grab it. I think it sounds amazing. And I think it's really needed, Trish. I'm being really honest with you. And I tell you, I love to look out in the marketplace and see where the holes are. And I think this is a really big gap in the market right now for people to understand how they actually want to express themselves through their business and through their brands. And since we are so visual, what does that look like? And so I really appreciate what you're doing for all of the amazing women on the Game On Girlfriend podcast who listen in and really want to advance and grow and expand themselves. I really appreciate what you're doing in helping people be more of who they are instead of more of what's already out there. So thank you so much for being here today, Trish. It's been an absolute joy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to connect with all of you listening. Please come say hello. And thank you so much for having me. What a beautiful conversation. I'm so excited for what's to come.
I love it when that happens. All right. Thanks, Trish.